Hello and welcome to This Evening. I'm Polly Willoughby.
And I'm Bill Schofield. On the show tonight we'll be discussing the different forms of genital cutting.
Our guests this evening are Dr. Amber Wilson from the British Medical Association, and she'll be talking to us about the practice of genital cutting. We'll also hear from Sean Jones, who is a victim of intersex surgery and now campaigner, and she'll be explaining her experiences of falling outside of the gender binary. We will also be hearing from our freelance reporter Elise Taylor, who's been on the streets of Leeds, outside the Leeds University Union, speaking to people and hearing their opinions on genital cutting. Well, we'll dive straight in and welcome Dr. Amber Wilson from the British Medical Association onto our show.
Evening.
Hi. Welcome, Amber. Can you explain to us here in the studio and for those who are watching at home, what are the practices of genital cutting and why is it increasingly being seen as controversial?
Okay, so I'll give you a little background to start with. So female circumcision compromises of the partial or total removal of the female genitalia. So the World Health Organization places this on a spectrum. Number one with ritual circumcision, so it involves the pinprick of the clitoral hood revealing a droplet of blood. Number four we've got infibulation, which is nearly total removal of the female genitalia. In contrast, male circumcision is the removal of the foreskin. So essentially the removal of healthy tissue. There we are. Intersex surgery involves a variety of conditions in which a person is born with reproductive or sexual anatomy that doesn't fall within these binary definitions of female or male.
I know that female circumcision is illegal. Does that mean male circumcision and intersex surgeries are also illegal?
Right, so under the Female Genital Mutilation Act 2003, it's prohibited. It carries excessive penalties reflecting society's attitudes towards this, generally not accepting. There aren't such restrictive laws on male circumcision, which could generally be reflectant of the normative values that we hold in justifying male circumcision, which can be seen in the case of Brown, where ritual circumcision was compared to tattooing in terms of legality. Similarly, intersex surgery has no direct legislation which actually exacerbates the inequality of power that we're seeing. Legal gender is determined by the state, which means that these intersex individuals have to adapt to the state as opposed to the state adapting to them. A document that could actually change this, or at least change the perception, would be the UN Convention on the Rights of Children.
Male circumcision and intersex surgeries don't have such detrimental consequences as FGM though, do they?
It depends. Intersex individuals are forced into this binary system that we're associated with, that everyone's so used to, which is female and male. It means that people who fall within this sexual continuum aren't accounted for, so they generally feel pushed out and not accommodated for, which could lead to physical and emotional trauma. The case of B&G recognised that if the World Health Organization can account for type 4 of female circumcision, it should be able to account for male circumcision and have equally disapproving attitudes as well. Female circumcision tends to be the focus of domestic and international outrage, which kind of overshadows male circumcision. Beyond general health consequences, if it's not performed in sanitary and sterile conditions, then there's also issues of sexual pleasure and long-lasting psychosexual problems later in life, which tend to be overlooked for the benefits of those who are strong enough and masculine enough to be able to withdraw and go through this surgery.
It sounds like we need to save women from these barbarous acts, to be honest.
Well, that's actually the opinion of many people, specifically within the West. But in the same way that we feel we have to conform to the aesthetic perfection in terms of maybe going through breast enlargement surgery, for example, people within different cultures feel that way as well, that they have to conform to these predetermined standards created by others. Some feminists argue that having to conform to this would actually exacerbate the problem and accentuate the way that women's bodies are viewed as imperfect and we have to conform, but it could be another possibility if we were to take the perspective of cultural realists who hold that all cultures should be equally accounted for. Just because they don't conform to the Western opinion, it doesn't make them any less valid.
It's so strange that we really know what male circumcision is, but not the other two.
Well, it's like what Dr. Wilson said. It's based on what our society deems to be acceptable. So if you see it in like the structures in our society, that these hierarchical structures deem one as acceptable and one as not. So we're conditioned to that. We accept that just because it's what's classed as normal, isn't it? Well, thank you very much.
Thank you. We're now going to introduce Sian Jones. Welcome to the show, Sian.
Hello.
From what we understand, Sian, you're a victim of intersex surgery.
Yeah.
Please can you tell us your story and how the surgery has impacted your life?
Yeah, well, when I was born, I initially had parts of the male genitalia, so I could have been classified as a male. But at just 1 week old, it was decided that my penis was going to be cut away. So to perform such an invasive surgery at such a young age, it's extremely unjust. And as a person who's suffered from gender dysphoria since I can remember, I believe it's important that we should all be able to choose our own sex. And I've just found out the heartbreaking news that I'm never going to be able to have my own children.
It's awful. It's really sad to see that these surgeries are carried out with the intention to normalise intersex people. Do you feel like you're being pushed away from the rest of society? And do you think the surgery was really wrong?
Well, my own future was decided before I even had the capacity to consent for myself. I was different, I just needed normalising, and to be ordinary I had to fit one of the binary genders, so it was ultimately decided that I was going to be a female. I don't feel any more normal, I just feel like I can't express myself and away my rights and my dignity to make my own choices and to decide my own identity for myself. So they've pushed me further away from potentially being normal.
Law's intended to be rational, Sian. Do you think that the decision around your corrective surgery was correct?
No, not at all. I think the whole idea of being normal stems from who decides what normal is. So the person who decides what normal is hasn't been through what I've been through. They've never experienced it or been around it, so...
Do you believe that the surgery should have been postponed until you were old enough to make an autonomous and consensual decision?
Yeah, I think, why can't these surgeries be postponed until a person is of an appropriate age?
Thank you for your story, Sian. It was very brave of you. We're now going to go out onto the street to our reporter. She has been on the streets of Leeds speaking to people about genital cutting.
Hi, I'm Elise Taylor and I'm here outside Leeds University Union to gather some public opinion on what we're going to talk about on today's show. Do you think that male circumcision toughens up men?
Well, it's done at a young age, so they're experiencing pain when they're babies, so I suppose that could make them tougher, but because it's done at a young age, they can't really remember it either.
What are your opinions on it being fair to consent to male circumcision but you can't consent to FGM?
Well, FGM is mutilation, so I feel like it's quite an accident.
What do you think about people being labelled as intersex and other in society? Do you think that pushes them further away from the gender balance?
Personally, I don't really understand what intersex is, so...
I don't know what intersex is.
So we've had some tweets come in during our conversation today, so we're just going to run through a few of them.
The tweet that's come in is from @Fox and Thompson. What appears to distinguish male circumcision from female genital cutting is that they have been sanctioned and performed by practitioners of Western medicine.
And now we've got a tweet from @Dr. Mitch Travis, and it says, state responsibility for the bodily integrity of its subjects trumps pathologizing accounts of intersex embodiment and cuts across the public and private divide. This requires a reorientation of jurisdiction, but is certainly not outside of the realms of possibility.
And another tweet that's literally just pinged through. In the case of intersex infants, the motivation is to normalise the child by assigning it to a definitive sex category, while in the case of male circumcision, it's to perfect the child's body and signal membership of a privileged category.
Well, those are great contributions to the show today. So we will be back after the break. Thank you to our lovely guests. But we'll be talking about the social model of disability.